So sometimes you got a very rough flying, very rough landing.
Yeah.
So you got fear.
Yeah.
So I was saying to myself, okay, feel the fear.
Yeah.
But I couldn't get to there. So you don't, because you say that it doesn't work. So you start to ask for help. To the archangel Michael or whatever angel to hold the plane.
Yeah.
Because you see that it's moving too much.
And it doesn't look like the ground's coming up at the right speed. Yeah.
That the air hostess look worried.
Yeah. When the air hostess looks worried.
And that the landing has been very rough.
Yeah.
So how do you feel that fear? To release that fear? Because it's what you always say, but I don't know how to do it.
The first secret to feeling your fear is to stay in your body.
Yeah, I done that, and you start a little bit of shaking, but then you stop and you ask for help or whatever. So
Can I illustrate, though, how to stay in your body?
Yeah.
The key of staying in your body is your breathing, right? Your breath. If you're breathing into your diaphragm area, there's a higher likelihood of you staying in your body than if you breathe in your chest.
Yes. When you're scared, you stop breathing.
Exactly. When you're scared, you hold your breath, or you go to your chest and go really short breath. The key is to go back into your diaphragm when you're breathing, and then just to allow the feeling to arise and whatever effect it has on your body. Now, where most people control their fear is through their breath. So the way most of us have learnt to control fear is by breathing shallowly, or breathing in our chest, or holding our breath all together. And those methods that we've learnt had to be unlearned. Now, it took me, I had lots of fear to deal with in my life, and it took me nearly 2 years to learn how to breathe. And what I used to do was I would go jogging, and because jogging, you're having to suck in huge amounts of air in order just to keep everything functioning. So in the process of doing that, I started to focus on breathing into my stomach while I was jogging rather than into my chest. And you try it, it's very hard initially, particularly if you're used to doing it differently. And then what I would also do is I'd lay down on the bed and I'd breathe into this area of my diaphragm, in this area, the tummy, fill up that first, and then instead of breathing out, I would then also fill up my chest. So breathe it, you try doing that and then it's like, that's as far amount of air as I can get in, right? And then just let it out without control. So most of us go, right? That's controlled. Let it out without any control and see what it feels like. In other words, suck it all in and then go, you know what I mean? And practice breathing like that at least for a few minutes every single day. What I did, I used to do that every day. And I found the more I did that, the more it allowed me to connect to my fear. It was sort of like getting my body to learn how to accept the fear. And if you're out of your body, you're not going to ever feel your fear or many other emotions for that matter. But if you stay breathing and really focus on your breathing, feel your body, feel its pains and aches, staying in your body and feel its aches rather than try to avoid them. What you'll find is that soon after you start that process with prayer about staying in that process, and desire, your desire, of course, is a large part of this, stay in that process, you'll find the fear will start coming up. You'll start noticing when you're laying down, for instance, doing that all of a sudden parts of your body start, like twitching, or just you'll feel different relief occur in different joints as well, and you'll feel that things start twitching and moving around. And then after a while, as you continue doing it, you'll start actually even getting teary when you'll find you'll think of a fearful thing and all of a sudden feel a bit teary. So that's a good sign that everything's starting to shift. If you need help doing it, my suggestion is to do what I did, and that is to find a person who does some kind of mind-body therapy where they focus on your body rather than your intellect so much, and they get you to actually be in your body, feeling what your body feels. And that I found I needed a lot of help. I needed a year and a half of that before I could actually, and during that year and a half is when I felt most of my fears. So sometimes you need to sort of go along to somebody else who's versed in all of those things to feel your fear. Another thing that's very handy, that I found very handy and Mary's found very handy, is actually having some form of massage that doesn't go into the extreme. In other words, it keeps you on the edge of pain, but not so much pain that you want to go out of your body. Does that make sense? So in other words, you can feel the pains and you can feel it coming up. And if the person is open emotionally, and that's the key thing, the therapist needs to be open to you having a cry if you need to have a cry, or for you to shake if you need to shake. And I've found many therapists open to a woman doing it, but not many open to a man doing it, unfortunately, because there's all this projection at the male that he should be stronger than that and all those kind of things. But if you can find an appropriate therapist to do that, that also does assist quite a lot, just the process of having massage, because inside of your tissues, of your muscles, once you're in your body, the emotions will be reflected in the body's tissues. So as a result of that, when you get some massage or some form of body therapy, you'll find that the emotions will come up more readily. But for most people, like for me, I had an extreme amount of fear, and Mary has an extreme amount of fear. So for us, going through it has taken a couple of years to connect with our fear. And for me, it took a couple of years. I was quite connected with my fear, but it took me a year and a half to feel it, just all of my fears. For Mary, you'd say that you've only just started to connect to it probably in the last 8 months or so, wouldn't you?
Yep. Definitely. There's lots more to process. And I had to work on my desire. I would get to that point, feel it, and then you know how where you go, oh, not working, back to the archangel. Yeah. That's the point. I realised I had to go soft, because I was like getting panic, and it's going soft to the panic, if you like.
Softening into your fear, or softening into your feelings. Like being... So you see, we're very judgmental of feelings. Yeah. As a human race, we're very judgmental of feelings. And we're often very judgmental of our own, because we feel a large degree of feelings of weakness when we have a feeling. So society generally, when you cry, automatically views that state as weak, right? When you're... for men... It's much better to be angry than cry, because society views that as a strong state, right? So we have a lot of judgment about feeling the feelings inside of us, and that judgment causes us to, when we get close to them, to skip out of it. The key is to allow yourself to work through your judgments. And for me, I had very little judgments after I allowed myself to sort of feel ashamed of myself, I suppose is the best way to put it. Like, I was very detuned from emotions until the point where I felt like I was allowed to have a breakdown, I called it. Like I was allowed to connect to my grief. And once I allowed myself to connect to my grief, it didn't matter who was there as to what I did. I still allowed the grief to flow. It's taken a while for you to do the same thing, hasn't it, babe? Like, yep. There's been a time when you felt like you were going to be humiliated if you demonstrated any emotion. Yep. So you've sort of got to get over these blocks that we have towards fear. And a lot of that is about humiliation and feelings of like that other people will control us, or other people will laugh at us, or, those kind of feelings have to be gotten through first. It's a common thing that's said to a lot of men, even by their dads, isn't it? Don't let them see you're afraid. They'll just use that against you. And don't be a weak man, and they don't necessarily say it like that, do they? Usually
so you have to know where that fear comes from. Because I was wondering if it comes from the fear of death or not when you are in that situation.
I feel you just need to know why you feel like you can't surrender to the fear. The fear will tell you why you're afraid. Yep. The fear will tell you why you're afraid when you surrender to it, and then you'll know what I'm afraid of. But at the moment you're blocking that, and you kind of want to know where it's going to go before you go into it. But the emotion always knows its way home to its cause. You just have to let it take you, yeah. But it's the block, I think, that to focus on. What am I afraid of happening if I let fear overwhelm me?
Yeah. So if you let yourself see this is a general way of settling into your emotions. Like initially we start with our addictions, and our addictions are all the things that we do to prevent ourselves from feeling our fears. So you know, every addiction we have, whether it's a physical addiction of some kind or an emotional addiction, which is far more, I suppose you'd say far more insidious, but also far more popular, emotional addictions. Whatever the addictions they are, they prevent you from accessing the fear. So you could say your addictions cover over the blocks to your fears. The blocks are things like how much judgment you have about feeling your emotions, how much judgment you have about fear. As males, we often have more judgment about fear than females do. So females generally are allowed to feel afraid, and us men come to their rescue. Does that make sense? Now, what does the man do when the man feels afraid?
You have to look,
Who comes to his rescue, right?
you have to look like cool in the
Yeah, you have to look
yeah.
like, yeah, I'm not that
I'm
afraid.
in control.
I'm in control, you know. You know, this is where we go, isn't it? Like, we're constantly, as males, we're constantly portraying that we've got things under control, we're right. It's only the women that are a bit weak and like that, you know. They need our help, don't they? You know, and all this kind of thing. The reality is that most men feel just as much fear as most women feel. And not only that, they then cover over that fear with a layer of addictions, which eventually results in their anger. So when we're into the angry place, we're actually covering over the fact that our addictions are not getting met. And so usually with our blocks, we either go addictively or into anger, and that's where most men go with most of their fears. If we can see what our blocks are, and a lot of the blocks are judgments. The woman won't think I'm a sexy male if I'm crying in front of her or feeling afraid. When she feels afraid and then I feel afraid, she then feels that I'm not protecting her anymore. That's a big thing for many males. If she feels afraid and then she's crying and I feel afraid and I show that fear to her, she feels that less attracted to me. There's a lot of
how other men treat you.
How other men treat you when you're afraid.
I think in my case is, I